Now it's my pleasure to present today's presenter, Mark Stiving. Mark is Chief Pricing Educator at Impact Pricing and has over 25 years of pricing, coaching, and leadership experience, helping companies focus on the value they deliver to their customers. He's also author of several books, including Selling Value, How to Win More Deals at Higher Prices, which we are giving away if you enter the survey. So with that, Mark, welcome, and I'm going to give you control.
All right, thank you, Nick. I'm going to focus on getting control.
Yep, coming right over to you.
There we go. Beautiful. All right, welcome everybody. This is going to be fun. Real quickly, my very first job out of college, I was trained as an engineer and I designed transformers for a living. I then moved into sales and I sold automatic test equipment. I moved into home automation and I sold, or actually created a company that built and sold home automation products. I have a PhD on ketchup and yogurt and the 99 cents and how they end. I worked in semiconductors, and all of that to say, I have lived most of my career in the physical world. I have dealt with physical products almost constantly. Now, when I got into the semiconductor world, I decided, hey, it's time for me to actually build a name in pricing. So I wrote a book. And that was my very first book called Impact Pricing, Your Blueprint for Driving Profits. And it was everything I knew about pricing, and I tried to organize it and capture it. And I also created a course. So I sold my course and my company to a company called Pragmatic Marketing. You may have heard of them. They're not called Pragmatic Institute. They have 85% market share in training product managers in the US. And this gave me such insight into, oh, by the way, here's a picture of my first book. This gave me such insight into how product managers think and how products get built. And it gave me this focus on value, unlike what I'd ever done, even thinking about pricing. So I had the privilege of working with Pragmatic for 8 years or so. I still teach for them part-time, but I wanted to create new content and they wanted to own everything I created, according to the agreements that I'd signed. So I ended up leaving the company. I'd sold them my previous book and so a previous course. And so I couldn't compete with that. And I said, what am I going to go do? So I decided to go study subscriptions. Now, while I was teaching pricing for Pragmatic, I would often get the question, how does this apply to subscriptions? And my answer was true. It's the same. It's still about how customers perceive value. Boy, I didn't understand the nuances of subscriptions. So after I left Pragmatic, I dove headfirst into understanding what subscriptions meant. And there were so many aha moments, so many nuances to pricing and packaging subscription products that I wrote another book. And this one is really just filled with my aha realizations of how is subscription different than selling products. And just to round it out, I ended up writing a third book called Selling Value, which we're going to give away today, which is really all about understanding how your customers perceive the value of your products and how your salespeople can help communicate that and how you as a company can help support your salespeople. Now, we're going to do a whirlwind presentation in the next 30 to 40 minutes, and I'm going to start with 3 fundamental concepts, the first 2 of which you probably already know or you should know, but I want to make sure that we just get them on the table. The last one might be new to you, but it is still a fundamental concept in the way I think about pricing and value. So let's dive in. Oh, after these 3 fundamental concepts, we're going to go headfirst into subscription aha moments. So first, the single most profitable pricing strategy that any company can use is value-based pricing. Hopefully you already believe this. Value-based pricing has a really simple meaning. It means charge what a client is willing to pay. And so I often use WTP. But this is a fact. Customers trade money for value. The only reason anybody ever buys a product from you, ever gives you money for a product, is because they think they're going to get more value than it costs them in money. Think about the last time you bought anything, doesn't matter what it is. When you bought it, you thought to yourself, oh, this is worth it. this is worth the money that I have to put out. Otherwise, you wouldn't have bought it. So this is a truism in this world of value-based pricing. And so what we want to always do is put ourselves in the shoes of our buyers and try to understand what that buyer is thinking. How is it that they value our product? Because when we understand that, we might be able to create more value. We could certainly communicate it, and then we can capture it through our pricing. And so this is the first fundamental concept. Your company exists to create value for customers. That's it. And pricing is the one thing you can do to capture that value. Fundamental concept number 2. Second most profitable pricing strategy is price segmentation. Price segmentation simply means we can charge different prices to different customers based on their willingness to pay. Hopefully you already believe this, but recall I said we want to put ourselves in the shoes of our buyers to understand what it is they're thinking. Well, do you think that this buyer is thinking the same thing that this buyer is thinking? Or the same thing that this buyer is thinking? Or this buyer? Obviously not. And so the impactful insight here is we don't have to treat every buyer the same. We get to charge different customers different prices. Now, we want to do it intelligently. We want to make it look fair. There's lots of strategies on how to do this, but just accept this as a given that we get to charge different customers different prices. So those were the first 2. You probably already know them. Here's the third one that you may not know. I call these will-I decisions. This is a very powerful concept that helps us understand how our buyers choose to buy products and how much they might be willing to pay. So the first thing to realize is, as we said before, customers trade money for value, but what's value? And it turns out there are 2 really powerful definitions of value that we can use as we think in our sales process and our pricing process. And these 2 powerful definitions. The first one is called inherent value. Inherent value is, what's the value of solving the problem? So if I were to ask you, how much value do you get out of having air to breathe? My guess is you're going to say lots, right? Everything I own, you can have it all. I need air to breathe. Got it. So the inherent value of having air to breathe is huge. The other type of value is called relative value. Relative value is, what's the value of this relative to the alternatives? And now if I told you I just captured some fresh Reno air, because I live in Reno, I just captured some fresh Reno air, who wants to buy it? And I'm guessing none of you. And why is that? Because you have all the air around you that you need for free. So air is either worth everything you own or absolutely nothing, depending on if we're talking about inherent value or relative value. And this is a really important concept for us because most purchases go through both of these decisions. So when I think about a customer's willingness to pay, the real question is, which of these decisions are they making? Because if they're only making the inherent value decision, they're willing to pay a lot more than if they're comparing us to competitive alternatives. So tomorrow morning you wake up, I'm assuming you don't play the guitar today. Tomorrow morning you wake up, your spouse gives you a little nudge and says, hey, honey, I really wish you would go learn how to play the guitar and sing me a love song. And you're thinking, oh, that pulls at my heartstrings. I really need to go do this. And so the next thing you do is say, I'm going to go to the guitar store and start shopping around. By the way, you just made the will I decision. Will I buy something in this product category? When you make a will I decision, you are using inherent value. What's the inherent value of getting a guitar and making your spouse happy? A lot. Once you get into the guitar store, then now you start shopping different guitars. Which one fits me better? Which one sounds better? Which one has a better feel to it? And of course, price is really important in that decision. But now we're making that which one decision. And in the which one decision, it's all about relative value. What's the value of this one relative to the alternatives. Now, the reason this is so important is our buyers typically go through both of these. They make the will I decision. They're using inherent value. They're saying, what's the value of solving the problem? They go on to make a which one decision. So what's the value of this one relative to the alternatives? Most purchases go through both decisions, but not all purchases go through both decisions. Sometimes people only make a will I decision. And when people only make a will I decision, they're using the inherent value of the product and they're not price sensitive. And this is really important to us. A competitive alternative wasn't considered. So here we've got popcorn at the movie theater. You walk into the movie theater, and after you walk in the door, you ask yourself, am I going to take out a mortgage today to buy popcorn or not? But there's no competitive alternative inside the movie theater. You're driving in the middle of nowhere and you look down at your gas gauge and it's an eighth of a tank and you see the sign that says last gas for 75 miles. You pull off, the price of gas is 4 times what it is in the city. Are you buying gas? Yeah. Because there's no competitive alternative. The iPhone is another fabulous example of this, because if you use an iPhone today, you are probably thinking to yourself, am I going to upgrade to the new iPhone 14 or not? But what you're not thinking is, am I going to upgrade to the new iPhone 14 or switch to Android? You're not considering a competitive alternative. And this is why Apple, well, first off, let's start. Android has 72% of the worldwide market share for cell phones. Apple has 85% of the worldwide profit in cell phones. Huge difference. And so the last of the 3 foundational concepts I want you to think about is you want to be finding and building more will I products, more will I situations. You want to make it so people are only making that will I decision. Okay, we get those concepts out of the way. Now let's jump into recurring revenue or subscriptions, the subscription world. And what is it that we can learn from the subscription world? First, let's look at a traditional business. In a traditional business, we have all these potential buyers at the top, and potential buyers fall into the funnel, the sales funnel. They become evaluators, and out the bottom pop real life customers. How does this happen? Well, marketing gets the potentials into the funnel. Salespeople hold their hand and guide them through the funnel, and we win customers out the bottom. How do you grow this company? Pretty easy. We put more money into marketing and sales. We get more potentials, we get more evaluators, we get more customers. Got it. How is this different in a subscription world, though? In a subscription world, take a look at that customer bubble at the bottom. And so we still have to win customers, of course, but instead of this big bubble, it becomes a much smaller bubble. We used to win $1 million deal, and now we get 1/30th of that per month. And so we get these much smaller commitments. We've won much smaller deals. But of course, we hope that those people stay with us and they pay us this 1/30th of the price month after month after month after month. And so we want to keep them. And of course, that little red circle is churn. That's bad. People who stop paying us. And then there's also the bubble that says grow. How can I get these customers to pay us more money? And so you're managing 3 different revenue buckets. In the world of subscription, you've got to make sure you go win customers, just like in a traditional business. But you also have to keep your customers and make them help them use your product, help them get value out of your product. And once we do that really well, then we have the ability to grow our customers. You've probably heard these words as acquisition, retention, and expansion. I like to use the words win, keep, and grow. In fact, I made it the title of the second book. And if you haven't realized yet that this is a major, major concept in subscriptions, and it should become a major concept in your business as well, please do. You want to win customers, you need to keep customers, and you need to grow customers. So in this business model, how do you grow your business? Well, in this one, what you're going to do that's slightly different, and we only see this in SaaS companies, is this department called customer success. A customer success department wants to make sure that people are getting value out of your product. And so I'm old. I used to shop at Fry's Electronics, and I would buy Microsoft Office in a shrink-wrapped box and take it home and put it in my computer. But here's an interesting question. Do you think Microsoft cared if I ever took the shrink wrap off that box? No, they got their money. They were happy. And in fact, I know that I bought software that I never took the shrink wrap off the box. And the company I bought it from, they were super happy because they got my money. But now if you're Microsoft and instead you're having a subscription to Microsoft 365, do they care if you're using your product? Heck yes. Because if you're not using it, you'll end up unsubscribing. You'll end up stop paying them. And so in this world of subscription, we actually care if customers use our products, which is very different than it was before, where we had the transaction, super happy, thank you for the money. If you never use it, we'll survive. And so if you truly want to grow your business, you have to think of it this way. We have to go win new customers, absolutely. But we also want to grow our existing customers. And these are the two places our company growth can come from. Now, of course, this is easier if we keep all of our current customers and we don't lose them. So we're back to win, keep, and grow. And you may have heard the following phrase before: land and expand. I love this phrase. I even heard this when I was selling hardware products. So we do this land and expand. Can I tell you how many times I've heard this and watched companies do absolutely nothing with the expand parts? Oh, we've got this customer. It's a really strategic customer. We have to win them because we're going to be able to sell so much more to them in the future. That's the expand part. My recommendation, a really strong recommendation, is all of us should adopt a land and expand strategy, but focus much more on expand than we do today. Or expand, you could think of that as grow. How do we get more money from our current customers? We want to be able to grow those customers. And so when we think about the value in the world of subscription, it's slightly different than it was in our existing transactional world that we had before. So before, and by the way, this exists today too, our customers perceive the value of our products. Our job in marketing and sales is to make sure we've communicated this value so the customer perceptions are as high as possible. The higher the perception, the more likely they are to buy from us. So great. On the other hand, once someone's bought a subscription, they start using it, they move away from their perception of value and they start moving more towards what's the real value. How much value are they getting out of your product? And so there's a difference between perceptions and reality, perceived value and real value. On the left, we have customers. When we think about our win, keep, grow, we need to win these potential customers. And so when we're winning customers, we're focused on that perceived value. When we think about our current subscribers, anybody who gets a low or has a low amount of real value, we need to be focused on how do we keep them? How do we make them happier? How do we help them get more value from our product? And then at the top, the people who get a lot of value, how do we grow them? How do we get them to pay us more money next year than they paid us last year? And this is a really important concept in this world of subscriptions. But remember the concept we talked about on will I products and will I decisions only? In this world of grow, oftentimes buyers are only making will I decisions. If you've got a subscription to a product and you want to think about upgrading it to a higher level, adding a new capability, a new option, a new feature, odds are really good you can't go buy that anywhere else. You have to buy it from this company. If you've got a KitchenAid mixer at home, which I would guess many of you do, if you have a KitchenAid mixer at home and you would like to buy a meat grinder attachment for the front of the KitchenAid mixer, how many companies can you buy that from? Turns out there's one. It's called KitchenAid. And so the price of that grinder is ridiculously expensive because you can only buy it from one place. You're only making a will I decision. So can we sell upgrades, options to our current customer base? and get them to give us even more money because they're only making a will-I decision. We as marketers, as business people, we have three levers. I call these value levers. We have three value levers that we get to pull. And these value levers have always existed. But once we started thinking about SaaS or software as a subscription, these value levers became much more interesting and understandable. And that's because in the world of software, we have the ability to change a lot of different things relatively quickly. And so the first of the three value levers is your market segment. You want to clearly define a market segment. Now I got it. It's really hard to do this when we're building physical products because it's harder to build multiple different physical versions of a product for different market segments. And in software, we can do that much, much more easily. But we've demonstrated in software that this is so profitable and so powerful that even if you've got hardware products, you should be thinking clearly about who is it that's willing to pay me the most? And can I create a version of my product for that market segment? The second one is packaging. Packaging, in the world of hardware, we've always had good, better, best products. We've thought about that before. In software, though, we can easily move features between packages. We can take a feature and put it from good to better or better to good and move them around. And so now we get to make this really conscious decision and test it and say, which feature goes in which package? And can I say this is a really hard decision to make? But it's so powerful when we get this right. And then the last one I find amazingly fascinating because when we were in the hardware business, we never even imagined there was this thing called a pricing metric. Because if you want to buy a bicycle, you buy a bicycle. If you want to buy a hamburger, you buy a hamburger. If you want to buy a semiconductor, you buy a semiconductor. When you want to buy software, though, they can charge you for almost anything. So a pricing metric is what do we charge for? In the world of software, we could charge for clicks. We could charge for views, downloads, gigabytes. We can charge for visibility, banner ads, right? There's so many things we can charge for that we never even thought of before. And so what is it that we're going to charge for? These three value levers, every single one of them are extremely powerful. They define how we deliver and capture value to our customers. Every one of them require a ton of internal coordination. If you've got a company right now and you say, hey, let's go change our pricing metric, it's hard, right? It takes a lot of work, maybe really worth it, but it takes a lot of work to go change every department, every system so that we now are capturing value using the right value metric. And my favorite is these are always present. No matter who you are, no matter what company you are, you have addressed all three of these. Now, sometimes you think about it consciously, but most of us just made the decision. We serve the market segment that just fell into our lap. Or we've got our packaging, we're not going to go change it, not sure how we got there. Or our pricing metrics seemed obvious, or Salesforce charged by the user, let's just charge by the user. Sometimes, though, we want to rethink these decisions. And you've heard me say a bunch, we want to grow our customers. Win, keep, and grow. And the grow part is grow a customer. There are only 4 ways to get more money from your customer next year than we got this year. We can raise their price. We can upsell them. We could cross-sell them, or we could take advantage of usage. Let me talk about each one of those again, but I want to do it in light of the 3 value levers. If we want to raise prices, the key here is, do we truly understand the problems that they're solving, the value that they're getting? And the better we've done market segmentation, there are some segments that get a ton of value from our products, and we can probably raise their prices, and other segments that don't get as much value, and we probably shouldn't raise their prices. In the world of packaging, when we've created good, better, best packages, we give customers the ability to upsell, to go from good to better, or better to best, or to buy an option. And that same packaging and market segment combination allows us to build other products where we might be able to cross-sell into the current customer base. And then usage. Usage is directly correlated with the pricing metric. If you can figure out how your customers get value from your products based on how much they use or what they do with it, and then we can charge for that, or at least charge for something that's correlated with that, then as your customers grow, as they get more value from your products, they pay you more money. We make more. And so these are the only 4 ways you can grow a customer, and they're tightly coordinated with this concept of the 3 value levers. And so you're thinking to yourself, okay, got it, Mark, got it, but you know, we don't spend much time on grow, and I know you don't. And let me tell you why you don't. On this chart, we've got 2 axes, urgent and important. Let me define these 2 in a slightly interesting way. We're going to define urgent as the possibility that you're going to lose your job because this didn't go well. And we'll define important as how much long-term profit does it bring into the company. And so when we first launch a new product, we've got win and keep in the upper right-hand corner. And why is that? Because we need to go win customers. We don't have any customers. And as we win them, we better keep them, or we're not even going to cover our customer acquisition cost. So therefore, win and keep are both really important and really urgent, because if it doesn't go well, you're losing your job. Grow, well, we don't even need to worry about growing customers because we don't have any customers. Why would we worry about growing them? It makes no sense. So as the company matures, as the product line matures, what happens? Well, winning new customers becomes less and less important because we have this huge pile of customers already. And so we're getting a lot of revenue. And if we win one more customer, it doesn't make or break the company. It's not the end of the world. Keep always is important, but it becomes a little bit less important. If we lose a customer here or there, that's okay. But if we start to lose too many, that becomes a big problem. But let's talk about grow. What happens over time? It becomes so much more important to your company. It adds so much more of the long-term profit to your company, but nobody ever gets fired if you don't figure out how to grow customers. This is where the easy money is to pick up. Who is it that's getting value from our product, and how can we get them to pay us more money? And I'll leave you with one more really important SaaS metric that we often see. It's called net dollar retention, NDR. Don't worry about the overcomplication of this slide. Notice that it came from RevOps squared. All I want you to look at is on the far right-hand side for the median, the total population is 105%. So here's what that metric actually tells you, that if we didn't win a single new customer, we would have grown by 5% anyway. So we take into account the churn, how many customers did we keep? We take into account the growth rate, how many customers bought more from us than they bought last year, and how much. But we completely ignore how many people win, how many new customers we win, and that's how we calculate net dollar retention. And if you can start focusing on net dollar retention, it's really giving us an answer that says, hey, these are our customers from last year. Are they paying us more this year? And focus on it. Make this a metric that matters in your company, and then now you'll start to deal with it. Okay, I told you a lot about subscriptions. What I want to tell you now about is really quickly, I'm just going to take a lot of these concepts and say, what do we talk about and what do we care about, even if we've got hardware products, even if we don't have subscription products? So first off, think, win, keep, and grow anyway. We still need to keep our customers. And we still want to grow our customers. And in fact, the second bullet, more focus on grow, more focus on the expand part of land and expand. We don't spend enough time thinking about how can we get more money from our current customer base. See if you can create more of these will I decisions. We can typically do this with options. We can do this with our current customers easier than we can with brand new customers. So think hard about the will I. Monitor usage. I didn't bring this up in the main presentation too much, but in the world of SaaS, these guys have gotten to where they can watch which customers use which features how much, and that helps them make really smart decisions on market segmentation, on how they're going to do their packaging, and even possibly what their pricing metrics are going to look like. So if you can figure out how you can monitor usage from your products, the information is incredibly valuable to decisions you have to make. And then finally, rethink your 3 value levers. right? Add one more market segment. Find a market segment that's willing to pay you the most and create a product exactly for them and charge them a lot of money for it. Think good, better, best in your packaging. I've seen that work in most companies, not all companies, but in most companies, it works really well. And think hard about your pricing metrics. Don't just accept what you've got. Say, yep, there really is a different pricing metric I may be able to use. Just to give you a couple of weird examples, there's a coffee shop in Russia that charges by the hour and not by the cup of coffee. There's a bookstore, a used bookstore in India that sells books by the kilogram, not by the book. So you can create different pricing metrics. And I have some more for you that I'll probably bring up during Q&A. But again, customers are trading value for money for value. Do we know how they're perceiving that value? Do we know how we're delivering that value and to whom? So I'm Mark Stiving. If you want to connect with me, this just gets you to my LinkedIn page easily. Feel free to send me a LinkedIn connection. And Nick, the show is yours.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing sharing all that. I know there's a lot packed into quite a half hour, so I'm going to take the control back right now and give it to Brian Hannon. So Brian Hannon is our VP of Sales, and he helps companies translate the quantified value of their offerings, both products, services, whatever solution you have, into interactive value stories that he'll walk you through right now. So Brian, take it away.
Great. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, Nick, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm just going to take a couple of minutes here and show everyone a quick example of a value story that Leverage Point helps its customers produce. And so our customers will log into their account via a website, leveragepoint.com, and they can bring up their own value stories. Typically, a value story is created based on one or more of their offerings. And here we have a fictitious company called Dean Chemicals, who makes automotive coating, or essentially paint for a car. And we're going to walk through quickly an example of a value story for that offering. So our value stories have various charts and graphs that they use and different storylines. This is one of the simpler ones where you begin a value story focusing on the key value drivers or the key areas of improvement or benefit or impact that your offering will have on your customer's business. And then you can start to talk about financially how that might benefit them. So here we have what we call a case study example, which is for a typical auto manufacturer making 40,000 vehicles per year, and various other sort of assumptions for the case study. But maybe today we're talking to BMW, and maybe BMW manufactures 100,000 vehicles per year. And maybe they use a slightly more material per vehicle for their coating. Now, what we've done there, what we've done there is start to customize this case study so that it better applies to BMW's situation. And here we can show on a per vehicle basis, or we can show on an annual basis, or potentially the life of the equipment. So what we've done here is initially made some estimates about how investing in what will be a more expensive solution for BMW will actually end up saving them money. And we're going to justify this claim in the next few slides. So what we do here is break down our claim into the three main pieces, and we talk through those with the customer, and we actually get their feedback. Because if we can sort of come to an agreement for each of the individual areas of value, that yes, we have this impact over what they're doing today, and maybe we have a study here that we can bring up, or maybe we embed a video into this value story that has a customer sort of reinforcing what we're saying as a salesperson to them, then what we're really doing is making them part of the story. And once they sort of jointly own the presentation or the value story with us, then that value story becomes more of a business case for why they should choose to do business with us. So once we've gone through each of the three pieces, then we can come back and give an overall summary. And here we may actually want to show this on a, sorry, I'm moving this around so I can see my numbers here. We might want to show this on an annual basis. So here we're saying, look, you're going to pay less for our competitive solution, but we've identified the three areas where we're superior. And there is a negative value driver that would come with investing in our solution. You might need to buy new equipment for your assembly line, and so there'll be a cost to that. But even though we're going to charge you more, the value you get back after everything is said and done is significant. So we may end up saving BMW almost $1 million per year by selling them a more expensive but more capable automotive coating. So that's sort of an example of a simple value story. We have the ability to export these PDF or PowerPoint, where we can then send them back to BMW in this case. So they have a record of our conversation, and hopefully they can use this as a way to communicate within their organization about why they should potentially do business with Dean Chemicals. So we have many more examples that we can show folks. So happy to set up a call with anyone who's interested and dig into maybe an example that's much more closer to the particular vertical, the B2B vertical that you might be in.
Great. Thank you, Brian, for sharing that. And like I think I mentioned before, if you're interested in seeing a demo, you can actually sign up in the exit survey and tick off the little box, and we will be in touch with you shortly. So now it is time for the Q&A, and I'm actually going to share the correct screen. There we go. Mark, you ready for this?
Make them easy. That's all I got to say.
All right. First one we got, yes, for anyone that asked, we will be sending along the slides probably in a day or two once we have the recording ready. So that's always a popular one. Here's one. So in terms of, we have a lot of people in the audience that are probably not in a SaaS business, but maybe want to apply some of the lessons in terms of value capture into their pricing models. Have you seen non-SaaS industries invoke some of these techniques, and any industries that you found surprising?
Absolutely. And let's say that the answer comes down in the physical world. The answer comes down more to companies that are embracing IoT. So Internet of Things. One of my favorite examples was Goodyear, and Goodyear came up with a new tire technology for trucks, and it got about 20% better life, but they couldn't get truck drivers to pay them 20% more for the tire. And what they did was they thought about, well, how is it that truck drivers get value from a tire? And it's based on how many miles they can drive. So Goodyear offered the truck drivers, we will sell you the tire per mile. So instead of a price for a tire, we're going to charge you a price per mile. And what that ended up doing is several things. Number one is because the tire lasted longer, Goodyear made more money because of the tire. But number two, it changed the way the customer, the truck driver, billed their clients, because they could now have a variable cost, which was the cost of the tire or the cost per mile. And they could add that into their billing systems. And so everybody was really happy about it. And it only happens because you can monitor how many miles someone's driving. I'll give you another example that's almost identical, and that is insurance companies, right? So insurance companies can charge you by the mile now. They can charge you based on what your driving habits are, because they can monitor your driving habits and see if you're a good driver or a bad driver, and decide what rate we're going to give you and adjust the amount that we're charging you based on the value that you're getting for the product. So these concepts are fascinating to apply in a lot of different ways. The question always comes down to, how is it that your customers perceive value? Oh, can I give you one more, Nick? Is that okay?
Yeah. These are great examples.
My other favorite one is Porsche in Atlanta. So it turns out that in Atlanta, you can subscribe to a Porsche as opposed to buy a Porsche. And when you subscribe to a Porsche, what that does is you pay them your $2,000 or $3,000 a month, depending on which plan you go for. And you can, go in one day and drive a 911 off the lot, take it back a few days later and drive a Porsche Cayenne off the lot, and then take it back a few days later and drive a different Porsche off the lot. So you can just keep swapping out Porsches. They cover all of the maintenance, all of the insurance. You have to pay for gas, and you get to choose what car you want. Now, you never own the Porsche, right? You just subscribe to it. Now, what I love about this example, and by the way, the other examples I gave you too, are we want to be thinking about, if we want to move to subscriptions, we want to be thinking about how do we plus the offer. So how do we take whatever value we're giving to our customer today and give them even more value, solve more of their problems as we shift them to subscriptions. In the world of SaaS, when we went from perpetual license to SaaS, one of the big pluses that we often got was now we've got managed services. So you've got someone else that's managing all the IT infrastructure, and the company doesn't have to manage their own IT infrastructure for all that. Just as one of the pluses you typically got when you went to SaaS.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up. The Porsche puts my Netflix subscription to shame there. But it does bring back, there's a famous blog post about how software is eating the world that most people in the B2B world, if you haven't read it, should read it, by Mark Anderson. Yeah, and then often...
Before you ask the next question, can I just mention something on what you just said?
Yeah, please.
So I actually haven't read that book. I think I'm going to have to go read it. But what I find absolutely fascinating is most hardware is useless without software. And so think about, if you build hardware today, think about the software companies around you and how much money they're making selling something that has almost zero marginal cost. And yet you build hardware, and the reason you don't sell hardware, the reason you don't sell software is because you've trained your entire company to think about, oh, we need to make sure we cover the costs of the hardware. And so if I'm in a sales situation and a customer asks me for a discount, it is so much easier to give away the software because there's zero marginal cost and not discount my hardware as much. So now I've covered my costs. And what we have to do is shift our whole company's thinking away from we have to cover our costs to value-based pricing, value selling. Right. And that makes all the difference in the world. And there's so much more money to be made in software than in hardware.
Yeah, that's we hear that from companies that we work with all the time, and the data and the intel that you often get from this technology often creates its own value, which in addition to being able to capture more as a differentiator. So that actually is a good segue into another question we just got about the distinction between subscription and repeat purchases. So think of it in a disposables context where you would just have something that was meant to be used and then replaced by an identical thing. So do you have any thoughts on that in terms of pricing metrics and value metrics?
Yes. Well, first off, I'm glad you said the word value metric because I want to make a definition for people so everybody can be using the same language. A pricing metric is what do we charge for? A value metric is how does a customer measure value of our product? How does a customer get the value from our product? And usually they're not the same thing. If we could make them the same thing, that'd be great. Usually they're not, but we want them to be highly correlated with each other if at all possible. And so the question was, quickly remind me of the question.
Yeah, so it's about repeat purchases. So going back to your Microsoft example, just we're buying it every 2 years.
Yep. So recurring versus subscription. It turns out that if you have a recurring business model, you probably want to think about it almost identically to a subscription business model. In fact, I think the only real difference when you think about it hard is a subscription is a constant payment month after month or year after year, and the payment level doesn't change. And in recurring revenue, it does change. Think about, I think a great example for this is AWS, right? Anybody who's using AWS, you actually are paying by the use. You haven't subscribed to it, but odds are good you're paying a big number every single month. And so although it's unpredictable, you are paying for usage. Now, Amazon should be treating AWS customers exactly the same way you saw when we talked about the 3 value levers and the 4 ways to grow a customer. They should be thinking exactly this way as they think about their customer base. And so most subscription companies today, most SaaS companies, are trying to figure out how to do more usage-based pricing. And you could argue that usage-based pricing is essentially saying, let's go closer to the way AWS does it. It doesn't have to mean that, because what we could do is put a usage quantity in a tier. So you can get up to 10 uses for this price, and then 10 to 30 uses for this price. And right, so a lot like the way we used to buy cell phone coverage.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think if you go back to your Microsoft example, they've attempted to move to a Office to more of a subscription model anyway. So that's a case study right there. Yep. A good question here about interacting with product management. So and I think that probably varies based on which industry you're in. But coordinating with product management to get the pricing metrics in, maybe the when and the how, I would imply from that question. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is a really hard question. So the first question is, who decides what the pricing metric is going to be, right? And depending on the size of your company, it could be the product manager that's making that decision. So in really large companies, you don't have executives making decisions like that. So it could be a product manager that's pushing that decision. But then again, in really, really large companies, for example, Oracle, they require all of their pricing metrics to be the exact same one, regardless. So they just charge by the user, because it makes it easier for them to manage everything internally and the way they do their business. But I think product managers, in the way I've always thought of product managers, it's crucial that they are heavily involved in what's the value of the product, what's the pricing metric that we're going to be able to get away with and be able to use. I'll just leave it at that.
That makes sense. Yeah, and I think just as a quick plug, we in Leverage Point we have customers that actually require the development of quantifying the process of quantifying value in Leverage Point before a product is brought to market. So then that aligns marketing, pricing, product together to not only make sure that the price adequately captures the value that the product delivers, but also in some cases it raises questions if there's marginal value, whether or not this is the most efficient use of resources. So if that's something you're interested in, we can have that conversation as well.
Yeah, I think a really, really bad thing that most companies do is they build products without understanding the value that their customers are going to get from their products. Yep. In fact, this may be a good plug for Leverage Point too. I don't think I've ever walked into a potential customer who actually understood the way their customers value their products. And so it is so unusual for someone to even know it inside the company, let alone being able to document it.
No, that's consistent with what we see as well. So if that's something that you think your team needs help with, we can talk. But I think we've got a couple more questions here to dig into. So so coordinating price, and I'm not sure what API impact means on all factors in terms of linking it to company valuation. So this might be more in kind of the subscription startup world, but do you have any thoughts on linking price impact to how valuable companies are, I guess, when they come to market or they initially make their exit?
Yeah, this is actually a no-brainer decision. So first off, subscription companies tend to get 4 to 10x the valuation of revenue over non-subscription companies. So if you can build your company around a subscription, you are much, much better off. And then secondly, companies who do, who master pricing get much higher valuations. And it isn't because they can go in and say, hey, we've mastered pricing. It's because they end up with much more profit. So think about this for just a second and assume that you've got, we'll talk about a hardware product, even though, you know, you may not be, but you've got a hardware product and you've got a hard cost and it costs $100 and you're selling it for, I'm going to change my story. It's cost you $50. You're selling it for $100. So you get a 50-point margin. What if you could improve your pricing by 10%? Right? So instead of $100, you're now getting $110. And that extra $10 is all profit. It didn't change your costs at all. And so mastering pricing helps you master profit way more than almost any other thing that you can do inside your company.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we had a follow-up question on that about pricing affects churn and sales dynamics. But I think probably what I inferred from what you were saying earlier is that ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about profitability. So finding the value, the pricing metrics, and the offering structures that maximizes value is the sweet spot you want to be in.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And since someone was mentioning pricing and churn, let me give a quick insight for you, if I may.
Yeah.
Anybody who has subscribed or has adopted your product, there are switching costs to leave. And before they adopted your product, they used perceived value to say, I think this is probably the best use of my resources. But once they've adopted it, they now know whether your product adds a lot of value to them or not. And let's assume you've done a really good job and you've added a lot of value, right? They're getting a ton of value, way more value than what they're actually paying for. Now you can raise their price. Because when you raise their price, they realize how much value they're getting. They're willing to pay for it. By the way, they're not happy. Don't ever get me wrong that someone's happy that you raise their price, but they realize the value is there and the switching costs are high to go to someone else. And so this is like free money. QuickBooks, I use QuickBooks for my business, and QuickBooks raises my price every single year. It ticks me off and I keep paying it.
Nope. I think back to the Netflix example, exact same. I'm still need to watch my content. So that's a great question and a great follow up. So thank you to the audience member there. I think I've got a good one to close with, which is, if that's okay, how important do you feel it is to communicate value? And this is back to kind of a more B2B context, communicating values and outcomes with users and buyers in QBRs, account reviews, and periodic check-ins.
So can I say that I've never heard that before, but I'm going to make
Sure.
a comment about it anyway. And I think it's awesome. Here's why I think this. When we're trying to win a new customer, we're focused on perceived value and how well do we sell the value. But after we've won a customer, do we actually go in and monitor how much value we're really delivering? Do we help that customer understand how much value we're actually delivering? And if we can walk into a QBR and say, hey, we delivered you $1 million, but we only charged you $3,000, then we're ripe for either selling more product, charging a higher price, raising prices. I mean, there's so much advantage to that. And then, by the way, if we're not delivering the value we think we should be, that gives us an opportunity to get our customer success people involved and say, how can we actually deliver more value? So I love the idea. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about that, it gives you a chance to salvage accounts too. So you might take another look and see that there might be value that is being delivered but not measured. So measuring value, as we say, is always a good discipline to do. So Thank you, Mark, for a wonderful presentation. And a quick note before we wrap, we're going to be having our next webinar on April 20th. So Bob Apollo will be joining us. He's going to be talking about developing outcome-based storytelling capabilities in B2B sales. So how you get your whole sales team to communicate outcomes and value in their sales interactions with buyers and customers. So this should be a good one. You can pre-register in the exit survey, and we hope to see you there. So from all of us at Leverage Point, I'd like to thank Mark for giving us a wonderful presentation. Hope you all take something away from this. And until next time, have a great rest of your week and take care.